and he moved with the majesty achieved only by royalty and master craftsmen. He was a jerkline skinner, the prince of the ranch, capable of driving 10, 16, even 20 moles with a single line to the leaders. He was capable of killing a fly on the wheeler's butt with the bullwhip without touching the mole. There was a gravity in his manner, and a quiet so profound that all talk stopped when he spoke. His authority was so great that his word was taken on any subject, be it politics or love. This was Slim, the jerkline skinner. His hatchet face was ageless. He might have been 35 or 50. His earbud more than what was said to him, and his slow, "It's not wiser to go around with the guy you know," said George. A powerful, big-stomached man came into the bunkhouse. His head still dripped water from the scrubbing and dousing. "Hi, Slim," he said, and then stopped and stared at George and Winnie. "These guys just come," said Slim by the way of introduction. "Glad to meet you," the big man said. "My name's Carlson. I'm George Milton. This here's Lenny Small." "Nice, glad to meet you," Carl said again. "He ain't very small." He chuckled softly at his joke. "Ain't small at all," he repeated. "Meant to ask you, Slim, how's it been? I seen she wasn't under your wagon this morning." "She slang her pups last night," said Slim. "9 of 'em. I drowned them 4 of 'em right off. She couldn't feed that many." "Got 5 left, huh?" "Yeah, 5. I kept the biggest." "What kind of dogs do you think they're gonna be?" "I don't know," said Slim. "Some kind of shepherds, I guess. That's the most kind I've seen around here for when she was in heat." Carlson went on. "Got 5 pups, huh? Gonna keep all of 'em?" "I don't know. Have to keep 'em a while so they can drink off Lulu's milk," Carl said thoughtfully. "Well, look a here, Slim. I've been thinking that dog of Candy's is so goddamn old he couldn't hardly even walk. Stinks like hell, too, every time he comes into the bunkhouse. I can smell him for 2-3 days. Why don't you get Candy to shoot his old dog and get him one of the pups to raise up? I can smell that dog a while away. Got no teeth, damn near blind, can't eat. Candy feeds him milk. He can't chew nothing else." George had been staring intently at Slim. Suddenly, a triangle began to ring outside. Slowly at first, and then faster and faster until the beat of it disappeared into one ringing sound. It stopped, and suddenly as it started. "There she goes," said Carlson. Outside, there was a burst of voices as a group of men went by. Slim stood up, slowly and with dignity. "You guys better come on while there's still something to eat. Won't be nothing left in a couple minutes." Carlson stepped back to let Slim precede him, and then the 2 of them went out the door. Winnie was watching George excitedly. George rumpled his cards into a messy pile. "Yeah," George said. "I heard him, Winnie. I'll ask him." "A brown and white one," cried Winnie. "Come on, let's get dinner. I don't know whether he got a brown and white one." Winnie didn't move from his bunk. "You ask him right away, George, so he won't kill no more of 'em." "Sure, come on now. Get up on your feet." Winnie rolled off his bunk and stood up, and the 2 of them started for the door. Just as they had reached it, Curly bounced in. "You seen a girl around here?" he demanded angrily. George said coldly, "About half an hour ago, maybe." "Well, what the hell was she doing?" George stood still, watching the angry little man. He said insultingly, "She said she was looking for you." George put down his cards very deliberately. "Winnie," he said sharply. Winnie twisted his neck and looked over his shoulder. "Huh? What you want, George?" "I told you you couldn't bring that pup in here." "What pup, George? I ain't got no pup." George went quickly to him, grabbed him by the shoulder, and rolled him over. He reached down and picked the tiny puppy from where Winnie had been concealing it against his stomach. Winnie sat up quickly. "Give him to me, George," George said. "You get right up and take this pup back to the nest. He's got to sleep with his mother. You want to kill him? Just born last night and you take him out of the nest. You take him back or I'll tell Slim not to let you have him." Winnie held out his hands pleadingly. "Give him to me, George. I'll take him back. I didn't mean no harm, George. Honest, I didn't. I just wanted to pet him a little. George handed the pup to him. All right. You get him back there quick, and don't you take him out no more. You'll kill him the first thing you know. When he fearfully scolded out of the room. Slim had not moved. His calm eyes followed Lenny out the door. Jesus, he said. Just like a little kid, ain't he? Sure, he's just like a kid. There ain't no more harm than a kid either. Except he's so strong. I bet he won't come in here to sleep tonight. He'd sleep right alongside that box in the barn. Well, let him. He ain't doing no harm out there. The old man squirmed uncomfortably. Well, hell! I had him so long. Had him since he was a pup. I herded sheep with him, he said proudly. You wouldn't even think it to took at him now, but he was the best shaped dog I have ever seen, George said. I seen a guy in Wheat that had an Airedale could herd sheep. Learned it from the other dogs. Carlson was not to be put off. What, Kenny? This old dog just suffers himself all the time. If you was to take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head, he leaned over and pointed. Right there. Why, never know what hit him. Candy looked about unhappily. No, he said softly. No, I couldn't do that. I had him too long. He don't have no fun, Carlos insisted, and he stinks to beat hell. I'll tell you what. I'll shoot him for you. Then it won't be you that does it. Candy threw his legs off his bunk. He scratched the white stubble whiskers on his cheek nervously. I'm so used to him, he said, softly. I had him from a pup. Well, you ain't being kind to him keeping him alive, said Carson. Look, Slim's bitch got a letter right now. I bet Slim will give you one of his pups to raise up, wouldn't you, Slim? The Skinner had been studying the old dog with his calm eyes. Yeah, he said. You can have a pup if you want to. He seemed to shake himself free for speech. Carl's right, Candy. That dog ain't no good to himself. I wish somebody shoot me if I get old and a cripple. Candy looked hopelessly at him, for Slim's opinions were law. Maybe it'd hurt him, he suggested. I don't mind taking care of him. Tell how I'll do that, George. Sure. You go out in the alfalfa patch and you have a sack. You fill the sack and bring it in and put it in the rabbit cages. They nibble, and nibble, said Winnie. The way they do, I seen them. Every 6 weeks or so, George continued, them does will throw a litter so we have plenty of rabbits to eat and sell. And we keep a few pigeons to go flying around the windmill like they done when I was a kid. He looked rapidly at the wall over Winnie's head. And a beer on, and nobody can be us. If we don't like a guy, we can say, get the hell out. And by God, he's got to do it. And if a friend come along, why we gotta have an extra bunk? And we say, why don't you spend the night? And by God, he would. We have a setter dog and a couple of striped cats, but you gotta watch out. Them cats don't get a little rabbits. Winnie breathed hard. You just let them try to get the rabbits. I'll break their goddamn necks. I'll smash them with a stick. He subsided, grumbling to himself, threatening the future cats, which he might dare to disturb the future rabbits. George sat and traced with his own picture. When Candy spoke, they both jumped, as though they had been caught doing something reprehensible. Candy said, You know, where's a place like that? George was on guard immediately. Suppose I do, he said. What's that to you? You don't need to tell me where it's at. Might be any place. Sure, said George. That's right. You couldn't find it in 100 years. Lenny covered his face with his huge paws and bleated with terror. He cried, Make him stop, George! Then Curly attacked his stomach and cut off his wind. Slim jumped up. The dirty little rat, he cried. I'll get him myself. George put out his hand and grabbed Slim. Wait a minute, he shouted. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, Get him, Winnie! Lenny took his hands away from his face and looked for George, and Curly slashed at his eyes. The big face was covered with blood. George yelled again. I said, get him! Curly's fist was swinging when Winnie reached for it. The next minute, Curly was flopping like a fish on a line, and his closed fist was lost in Winnie's big hand. George ran down the room. Let go of him, Winnie! Let go! But Winnie watched in terror of the flopping little man whom he held. Blood ran down Winnie's face. One of his eyes was cut and closed. George slapped him in the face again and again, and still Winnie held on to the closed fist. Curly was white and shrunken by now, and his struggling had become weak. He stood crying, his fist lost in Winnie's paw. George shouted over and over, Let go his hand, Winnie! Let go! Slim, come help me! What, the guy got any hand left? Suddenly, Winnie let go his hold. He crouched, cowering against the wall. You told me to, George, he said miserably. Curly sat down on the floor, looking in wonder at his crushed hand. Slim and Carlson bent over him. Then Slim straightened up and regarded Winnie with horror. We gotta get him into a doctor, he said. Looks to me every bone in his hand is bust. I didn't wanna, Winnie cried. I didn't want to hurt him. Slim said, Carlson, you get the wagon candy hitched up. We'll take him in the Soledad and get him a fix up. Carson hurried out. Slim turned to the whimpering Winnie. It ain't your fault, he said. This punk, sure, had it coming to him. But Jesus, he ain't hardly got no hand left. Slim hurried out and in a moment returned with a tiny cup of water. He held it to Curly's lips. George said, Slim, will we get canned now? We need to stay. Will Curly's old man can us now? Slim smiled wearily. He knelt down beside Curly. You got your senses and hand enough to listen? He asked. Curly nodded. Well, then listen, Slim went on. I think you got your hand caught in the machine. If you don't tell nobody what happened, we ain't going to. But you just tell and try to get his guy canned, and we'll tell everybody, and then you'll get the laugh. I won't tell, said Curly. He avoided looking at Winnie. Buggy wheels sounded outside. Slim helped Curly up. Come on now. Carlson's got to get you to a doctor. He helped Curly out the door. The sound of wheels drew away. In a moment, Slim came back into the bunkhouse. He looked at Winnie, still crouched fearfully against the wall. Let's see your hands, he asked. Winnie stuck out his hands. Christ almighty. I hate to have you mad at me, Slim said. Room, right in the same bed all three. Had a strawberry patch. Had an alfalfa patch. Used to turn the chickens out in the alfalfa on a sunny morning. My brother sit on a fence rail and watch them white chickens they was. Gradually, Winnie's interest came around to what was being said. George says we're going to have alfalfa for the rabbits. What rabbits? We're going to have rabbits in a berry patch. You're nuts. We are too, U.S. George. You're nuts, Crooks was scornful. I seen hundreds of men coming by the road on the ranches, with their bindles on their back and that same damn thing on their heads. Hundreds of them. They come and they quit and go on, and every damn one of them's got a little piece of land in his head, and a goddamn one of them ever gets it. Just like heaven. Everybody just wants a little piece of land. I've read plenty of books out there. Nobody ever gets to heaven, and nobody's got no land. It's just in their head. They're all the time talking about it, but it's just in their head. He paused and looked toward the open door for the horses were moving restfully and their halter chains clicked. A horse whinnied. I guess somebody's out there, Crook said. Maybe Slim. Slim's comes in sometimes 2-3 times a night. Slim's a real skinner. He looks out for his team. He pulled himself painfully upright and moved towards the door. That you, Slim? He called. Candy's voice answered. Slim went into town. Say, you seen Winnie? You mean the big guy? Yeah. Seen him around any place? What you think I'm a kid? I tell you, I could have went with shows. Not just one neither. And the guy told me he could put me in pictures. He was breathless and ignition. Saturday night, everybody out just doing something. Everybody. And what am I doing? Standing here talking to a bunch of bindle stiffs.